So fuel injection in dirt bikes has been around for some time now. For the motocross bikes, really you saw sort of 08 through 2010 is where most of them converted. The enduro bikes a few years since. Yamaha's first fuel injected enduro bike, WR450F, 2012. This, 2016, the new generation WR450F, based on the motocross bike with a 4-valve fuel injected reverse mounted engine. And I want to talk a little bit today about the mapping on the thing, because I think the beauty of what Yamaha's done is they've taken it out. I mean, fuel injection in itself gives you a huge range of tuning options, and the beauty of what Yamaha's done is actually given that and put it in the hands of the consumer. Yes, a lot of the other manufacturers have tuning tools, but most of those are done through your dealer, or if you want to buy a user setting tool from, say, KTM or a Husqvarna, that's, you know, somewhere in the vicinity of $1,200. For $400, Yamaha's Power Tuner basically puts that tunability and encourages you to tune a bike. And essentially what it does, in increments of 3% fuel and 1% of ignition, it allows you to simply plug the thing into the bike. You can download some pre-programmed maps from Yamaha's website or via your local dealer, and you can literally muck around. It's a 10-second job to go from fire-breathing motocross style engine to a super tractable enduro engine to anywhere in between, entirely based on the map that you actually upload into the bike. As I said, it's a really easy, really intuitive system. In fact, you know, one of the hardest things is just the knack of getting the actual connection plug off the bike. It's just a bit tricky because it's just a really unusual way that you have to flick that, pull it off, and obviously you don't want to lose that, so stick that in your pocket and don't lose it. Then it's simply a matter of plugging your power tuner in, getting it the right way around, of course, powering up the bike so that it actually reads it, and then actually going through your maps. So we're in the setting mode at the moment, so we basically have our pre-programmed maps in there. What we've done with our project bike, with this 450, is we've actually looked at 3 things. So basically at the launch, map 2 was developed. So basically once the bike was de-restricted, the map developed for it basically uses more fuel at lower revs, basically give it some added torque, and less up top to generate more revs. The ignition settings are then sort of advanced across the board, also to allow the engine to rev. So that's what we're calling a competition map. Pretty good, pretty powerful, good all-rounder. At the other end of the spectrum, you know, if you, for instance, fit a YZ450 pipe on it, let me just cancel out of that. Now I've gone map 4, we've got in here is what's known as a YZ muffler map. So the YZ muffler map, if you want, you know, if you like, you're on a motocross track or a grass track, or a guy who really likes sort of like more responsive, punchy power, you know, with that less restrictive muffler, what you might do is you know, this map, obviously, if you're looking at the settings, use a lot more fuel, except at the lower revs to avoid flame outs, and more ignition advance for most throttle openings and RPMs. Now, that takes it very much back toward a motocross bike, and in the bush, not ideal. But of course, has its place. What we've settled on, and what we use a majority of the time, and which Chris HOLLIS, which is you know, Australian AORC and 4-day multiple champion, developed with the Yamaha technicians, is map 3 here, which is what we call the HOLLIS traction map. So essentially the traction map has lower, richer fuel settings at lower revs to ensure that the power comes on less abruptly. In other words, it builds its power in a more sort of, in a smoother, torquier, more progressive way. The ignition numbers you have a look at then is retarded at all throttle openings, you know, through the bottom end and mid, and that kind of in a lot of ways acts like a traction control. Now the difference between those curves, I just can't stress, it's chalk and cheese. So, you know, for $400 for one of these tools, to give you that tunability and that option, and just, you know, particularly coupled with a few things like a de-restricted airbox and a free flowing muffler, it gives you much more versatility in the power delivery that one bike can create. And as you saw, it's simply a matter of plugging the thing in, downloading the thing, and off you go. It's that easy. So in addition to those 3 maps that we went through, that's certainly not limited to 3 maps, you know. You're only limited by your imagination and your capacity to test the thing. The guys from Yamaha Motor Australia have been developing maps and got a few more. They run them on the website. We've got a bunch of maps, different map options on the Transmoto website. So, downsides, because I've talked it up, it's really good. Look, the only downside I sort of see, a few people sort of claim that this is a little bit of a coarse tuning implement. It is in a way, but in a lot of ways you know, that marries well with the fact that most people don't know a hell of a lot about what they're doing, and it actually allows you to make adjustments all within a completely safe range. The only other thing is that, you know, you literally have to, on a note of paper, note down which map's which. So map 1, 2 or 3 means nothing unless you've actually got a record of what those things are. You know, the tuner tool doesn't give you the capacity to actually rename those maps. But look, that's sort of really quibbling. you know, they're just sort of tiny points. It is a super easy to use system. There's an owner manual that comes with the tuning tool itself, and it really does make, I think it's actually invigorated you know, my inclination to actually test and muck around with bikes and you know, test different setups with the engine. You tend to do that a lot with the chassis and suspension, and the engine you sort of get what you get and you kind of deal with it. But this actually opens up a whole new realm of tuning and testing and experimentation, which you know, is a whole new facet, I think, you know, for this Yamaha project bike, and it's been a really good experience.